Welcome viewers, let's talk about SPA. Before I get into doing a virtual track walk, I want to talk about a couple of fundamental skills that I was taught coming through HPD programs, and that is recognize when a slow corner is there and recognize a fast corner. And as dumb as it may sound, slow corners you take slow and fast corners you run fast. What I mean by that is there's a couple of turns at SPA that they're really slow turns, and I think if you just respect that they are slow turns, you're going to be a lot faster through them. And just having that patience to say, okay, it's a slow turn, take it slow, don't try to hustle, don't try to gain too much time, especially like this one coming up. It drives like a slow turn. Just have a lot of patience with the car, and it'll work out a lot better than if you're constantly trying to hustle the car, all right? And then recognize when there's fast corners. We'll try to go over that soon, and here we go. Let's do a quick lap by lap here at Spa. So here we are going into turn one. This is a slow turn. Run it slow. Brake hard. Slow down a lot. Take it nice and patient. Back to the throttle. Keep your eyes down the left side of the track for a moment to keep the car left. Just trust me, it'll make it a lot easier not to spin out. Trace a line up the hill is where you're going to go. I'll talk about that later. Car placement's not too critical except for at the bottom of the hill. As long as you can keep it within the verge lines, it's a pretty easy turn if you set it up right at the bottom of the hill. And here we go, check our text messages, whatever. Coming up on a brake zone, long straightaway, go about a second into the curb and then brake. And now here's a no brake section, just kind of nurse it with the gas. You might get wide open throttle for a moment and need a lift, and there I did use a little bit of brake, but that was kind of a mistake. Brake at the curbs. Remember, a slow, patient turn. You want to just pull it in, maintain your speed pretty slowly around a corner. And a little bit of patience back there in that long right-hander goes a long way. Now, here's this corner. I don't run anywhere else like this in the game, but a light, slow brake. Notice that I held the brake for about a second at a very light rate, and that's what kept me into bounds of the track. You also have to turn a little sharper than you think. So brake at the curb, turn in. This is another no brake section, just a big lift to make that left. Now we're coming up on the next brake zone. Brake at the curb, turn sharp coming off the curb. And we go wide open throttle, and we should stay there until we get to the next spot. This is a late turn I'll address later on in the turn by turn. Wide open throttle, long turn, and really car placement's not too important until we get to the third set of Rolex boards, which are coming up ahead. And then you just want to whip it around that corner. Don't use the inside curb. The outside's okay. Under the bridge, go to about 110. Brake, 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 brake. Turn in. I was a little bit too wide there. And we'll talk about that rhythm as well. That is a very slow turn that you need to run slow. So let's now get to the turn by turn.
Let's go turn by turn of Spa. So we're going down into the first turn, and these are some of my earliest brake zones, in part because it's a low downforce configuration I'm running, and in part because these are some very fast straightaways. So I'm braking at about 110 to 125, and I'm going to be braking in a straight line, well, probably just past 50. I actually index my turning as kind of a rhythm thing, a moment before I know that wall's about to disappear. And then I make a very late cut. A very late turn should allow us to straighten the car up sooner and get straight down the straightaway earlier. 2 on this curb is okay. 4 on this curb will call track limits, and honestly, it's just not really worth it for the way it's going to unbalance the car. The outside curb is fine, but if you find yourself consistently needing a lot of this runoff, then it's probably because you're turning too early or trying to go too fast around that corner. Remember, Spa is a combination of very slow and very fast and even medium speed corners, and it's important to recognize that that last turn was a slow turn and run it slow. Now, here is a good point that I usually don't just take a shot down a straightaway, but this is a rare spot where you can really see around a corner that's really not difficult if you run it just right, but can definitely get you crossed up. And what I like to do here is trace a pattern over that curb. We're going to go 2 over that curb and just kind of take a look up the hill. And what that's going to do is tell your brain where you're going, and it really makes the corner a lot less intimidating than it is. The most crucial point, if you usually mess this up, it's usually you usually crash at the top of this hill, and it's usually because you made a mistake down here at the bottom of the hill. It is very, very crucial that you go left and put 2 tires over this curb momentarily before cutting right. And really what that does is turn Eau Rouge into 1 right and a brief left turn. And notice that there's not a lot of wheel angle here. You want slow and smooth hands. Fast turns are slow hands. It's really not that important that you get on this curb. As a matter of fact, this curb can actually jack your car up, but you want to get close to it. But car placement is not critical as long as you're within, say, a half a car width, maybe even a car width of the inside of the track. 2 over this left curb is fine, and usually if you find yourself going way out here, it's because you weren't in the right spot going at the bottom of the hill, and usually the same thing if you're using a lot of this runoff. It's because you didn't slow down enough, or it's because you were in the wrong position at the bottom of the hill. And really the only time you need to slow down for this corner complex is when it's raining. And then we go down a long straightaway, check our text messages and whatnot. And I'm just going to screenshot this just to show you what going into the brake zone is going to look like. And this is a really scary, you can go so much deeper into this zone than you initially think you can. But you're at basically car's terminal velocity. Had I activated DRS, I have gone into this corner at 215 miles per hour in this car. And basically, once I go past that beginning of the curve, I count 1001. And your 1001 and mine might be different, but my thing is I kind of count off a second in my head after I go by the curb, and then I get on the brake. This is just a visual marker. You can see I'm coming out of the brake and onto the gas at the same time. This is about my brake zone. I turn as the curb ends, aiming for here. 2 on the curb is good, and you can get away with 4 on the curbs if you're lucky, if you have regular stringency. And the important thing is no braking until we're down this straightaway and going into that long right-hander. 2 on this curb is fine. You could even put 4 on this curb if you're on regular stringency, in which case basically you just need to have tires touching the red and yellow. And by the way, let me go back a moment. You really shouldn't go all the way track right. If you're all the way on the right side of the track, then you probably will need a brake to make it around that next right-hander. So your goal here is just to kind of use a soft throttle, just using a nice momentum, a little bit like that my last track walk at Hungary. You just want a nice rhythm going through this corner. And I find that if I'm braking, it's because I've made a mistake here. Really, no brakes. You want to make sure you can get the car to the left side of the track. And it's really a pretty big lift for me, but a big lift and I can make that corner really well. 2 on each one of these curbs is perfect. And you can even go 4 over. And honestly, there's a bump right about where the car is at here. And it's actually a lot better if you're over on this curbing as you go, and it kind of like it's a way to gain kind of you fool the car into going around the bump. Strict corner cutting stringency will get you. I find that as the race goes on, I end up in a nice rhythm where I'm 2 over on that curb every lap anyway, but I filmed this in practice and I wasn't there yet. Now going down into this next corner is one of the toughest corners in the track in my opinion, because so much of everything else at Spa is fast, fast, fast. And this corner I run more like it's a really slow corner, rhythm-wise in my brain. So I'm going to start my braking at the curbing, and I'm going to carry the braking for a long time. I'm going to bring the car down to about 4th gear. And pay attention to this corner as it's kind of off camber. It's like the track is sloped against you. It's like you're trying to climb a hill going to the right as you go around, and at the same time the track's dropping off. And in real life, at least, what that means is this is going to be a very low grip corner, which means that the only thing you can really do is just take it slow. I see a lot of people make big mistakes here and end up all over the place because they weren't going slow enough in this slow turn. So turn a few blocks before the curb ends, aiming at the inside curb, which I inconveniently rode on. And really where you want to end up is right here. And notice that I'm just giving it a little bit of gas. I'm probably going to end up a little bit slower, maybe 70-ish miles per hour. Maintain a nice consistent speed at least halfway through this corner and try to hold this line. If you are out here on this curb, or out even worse yet on this runoff, then you're not being patient enough in this last corner. And to be honest, a really good characteristic of this track, why it's really well designed, is because I can't really think of anywhere on this track where it's actually beneficial to use the runoff anyway. It just doesn't seem to work for you. And really, if you're even near that curb, you made a mistake anyway. And if you do get out on that curb, the insult to injury is it jacks your car up. So you can go maybe halfway to 2/3 across the track at the corner exit, but you need to be able to hustle it back to the right-hand side of the track and get on this curb and make a really relatively quick left-hand turn off of about this point. I kind of missed the corner a little bit. 2 on that curb is fine. 2 on the exit curb is fine, but it's not the most essential thing. The essential thing is just that you're really, really close. And then we're just going to go downhill and fast into a corner that I really can't think of anywhere else that I approach quite like I approached this corner. And if you I want to really draw attention to how much braking I'm using. I'm not going to use maybe more than one more bar of brake than that, but I'm going to hold that brake for probably at least a second. There's places I use that little bit of a brake and it's just a brief tap. But the way I have found it works for me going around this particular corner is to use that light brake and hold it and for maybe 1 or 2 seconds, which feels so wrong, but this corner jacks people up and they're out here on the runoff, they're crashing, and I really, really think the proper way to run this corner is a light brake for a long time, and what really makes it so hard to do is that there's nowhere else on this track you run like that, and I really can't think of another track anywhere in this game right off the top of my head that I use that brake technique, but it's the way you need to run it. You aim for the curb, but you don't want to get to it. The inside curbing for a while is pretty evil. If you did the brake just right, you should come right to the exit, but if you're crossing it, for one, on strict corner cutting stringency like I was running here, the race director gets mad, and for two, it's not really of much benefit, if any benefit, to go out there anyway. Now car placement going into the corner, getting close to that curb was kind of important. Bringing it all the way out here to this outside curb is pretty important, but from here on out, it's really not that important where you put the car. You want to aim to get close to that curb, although it's an evil curb. But as long as you're within the verge lines and you're wide open throttle, from here on out, you're winning in this corner. Remember that curb is evil. If you get on it, it's probably going to jack your car up. As long as you can keep the car on the black between this line and that line, I don't really think it's important that you be anywhere, just as long as you're on the track, basically, and wide open. You do want to get back to the left side of the track as you go under the bridge, and you're going to start your braking right at the curb. And this is one of them spots, regular corner cutting stringency. There is a little bit to be gained in putting 4 tires over here. And this is also one of them spots where you don't want to use brakes. This is your last brake zone until you're setting up. I think it's corner 15 is the number of it, but I'm not good at knowing corner numbers in F1 for some reason. So we're going to use, I'm still trail braking into this corner a little bit. You do want to hold right side of track, and you might need a relatively decent lift to make this left-hander, but you really shouldn't need a brake. If you're braking, you're probably overslowing the car. What you really need here is just a lift. 4 on that curb is fine. This is a pretty good car placement, as well as coming out to the outside. The corner, the race director will get you, although on regular corner cutting stringency, all of this is totally fair game, and it's pretty usable, really. The curb's pretty friendly. As you're coming up to this brake zone, get to the left and brake right as the curb begins. And this is actually a very important corner that you run right, these next 2. And I think it's actually crucial to get very close or even on that curb to the right and get down to 4th gear. And once you accelerate coming out of this corner, the next time you will lift your throttle is going into the bus stop chicane. And I actually think this is very important that and this is what makes this corner so tricky, is that it's very fast and car placement is also very crucial here. You want to keep 2 tires on this curb. On regular corner cutting stringency, you can pretty regularly get 4 tires over this curb and you're fine. And I ran this on strict corner cutting stringency, and sometimes I got away with 4 and sometimes I didn't. I really don't know what the rule is, or I think it's just a glitch in the matrix or something. I start my turn in just after I can see the inside curb starting to go away from me, which is very weird to explain on a picture, but when you start driving this, you should start to see what I'm talking about. And it's actually very important that you turn just a little late here. I don't think it's important that you get to the inside curb, but what you will find is that if you are consistently going into this tire barrier or even into this house, or consistently having to use this runoff, for one, it's not faster, in my opinion. I don't have data to back that up, but it doesn't seem like it's faster to me. But if you're consistently going out there, then you need to go back and revisit where you're turning here. And the thing about a fast turn is when you're driving fast, your survival instinct makes you want to turn earlier, and that's actually what's crossing you up and getting you into this little jutted out tire barrier. So if you're consistently going out there, go back and revisit this little section of the track and turn later. Now from here, this straightaway, it's a wide open throttle corner, and it's very hard to see in the dark, but there's actually 3 sets of Rolex boards that you're going to go by. And when you see the 3rd set of Rolex boards on the horizon, you need to know this is the important turn. And you really need to adjust your car's downforce so that you can go wide open throttle through it all the time, even on hard tires. And really car placement back there is not critical. Don't hit the inside curb. The outside curb is usable, but the runoff is not faster. And again, the race director gets pissed anyway. So as you come into the next corner, you do want to get track right. There is a bridge, one of those little Aramco overhangs that you'll go under. There's a 150 and a 100, and I brake at about 110 to 125. It's really tricky because if you take a look, the track kind of goes left up there, which makes it easy to crab it into the corner a little bit. So you want to turn very late, right as the inside curb shows up and just starts to turn. Then you start a nice sharp turn. And it's a very sharp turn. Look how much wheel I've got in the car. Second sharpest turn on the corner and the track, really, next to the one coming up, and maybe turn one actually. And once you come off this corner, you don't quite want to hug that curb. You want to be off of it a little bit, but on the right half of the track, and just kind of hold it right half of the track for just a moment, and then cut left. It's very easy to cut 2 left and drive 4 over that curb, and it jacks up the balance on your car and everything when you do that. Keep it nice to the right as you turn in. Get to the curb, but not necessarily on the curb. The curb's okay to use as long as you kind of kiss it with the tires, but if you're like driving all up on this area, if like my left side tire was up here, it seemed like that just tries to spin the car out. And here's a spot where I think just putting your eyes in the right spot will help you, because this is a very traction limited area. These F1 cars don't like pulling off slow turns as much power as they have. And what I actually like to do is keep my eyes focused down the right lane of the track as I come off this corner. And what that does is the hands in the car go where your eyes look. So look down the right side of the track and try to keep your eyes looking right and let the car going right until you're in about 4th gear, and then you can start to work back over to the left to set up turn 1 again. And that's a lap of Spa. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Please leave a like if you feel so inclined. I was not liked as a child, so I'm trying to make up for it now. Thank you.
Okay, super job so far. We're getting great data. Stay focused.